18,000 feet beneath the Philippine Sea lies a graveyard of steel, the shattered remains of the USS Indianapolis. But what kind of mission could send such a proud ship to her doom? How could America's flagship, the vessel trusted with one of the most important secrets in human history, vanish without a trace? And why did no one come when her men cried for help? For 72 years, the truth waited in silence, buried under miles of water and decades of unanswered questions. The USS Indianapolis was more than a warship. She was a symbol of American pride, carrying a secret that would change the course of history forever. Yet her final voyage would end not in victory, but in catastrophe. A tragedy born from secrecy, fate, and the deadly silence of the sea. Launched on a cold November morning in 1931, the USS Indianapolis was born from ambition, the embodiment of America's rising industrial power between wars. Her sleek hull, forged in the shipyards of New Jersey, gleamed with the promise of strength and speed. To the men who first saw her glide across the Atlantic waters, she wasn't just a ship, she was the future of the U.S. Navy. Fast, elegant, and formidable, Indianapolis represented everything the Navy wanted the world to see: progress, pride, and power. Throughout the 1930s, she proved her worth time and again. Her decks hosted President Franklin D. Roosevelt during his voyages across the Caribbean, her brass rails gleaming, her Marine Honor Guards standing at attention. As storm clouds gathered over the Pacific, the Indianapolis transformed into something greater, the flagship of Admiral Raymond Spruance, a name forever tied to victory at Midway and the Marianas. In campaign after campaign, Aleutians, Gilberts, Marianas, her hull bore scars of combat, but never defeat. Shell fragments pitted her steel, yet her engines roared with the same defiant power. For her crew of more than 1,000 sailors, she wasn't just a ship, she was a home, a guardian, and a promise that no wave or enemy could break. By 1945, the USS Indianapolis had become more than a legend. She was the Navy's trusted spearhead, ready to face whatever history demanded next. July 16, 1945. In the barren desert of New Mexico, scientists watched the sky explode with the light of the world's first atomic blast. Thousands of miles away, the USS Indianapolis received new orders, sealed under the strictest secrecy. Her mission: deliver a mysterious cargo that would change history forever. At Hunters Point Naval Shipyard, 2 heavily guarded crates were lowered into her hold, one made of steel, the other of wood. Marines stood watch, rifles in hand, as a handful of Manhattan Project couriers signed papers no one else was allowed to read. To the crew, it seemed like any other assignment. To Washington, it was the most important voyage of the war. Inside those crates lay the uranium core and firing mechanism of Little Boy, the atomic bomb soon destined for Hiroshima. Only a few officers knew the truth. For everyone else, the mission was routine, the tension merely rumor. They didn't know they carried the weapon that would end World War II. With no escorts and radio silence ordered, Indianapolis raced alone across 5,000 miles of open ocean. Major Robert Furman and Dr. James Nolan monitored radiation readings daily, writing their data in code. Sailors wondered why Marines guarded empty corridors and why officers avoided questions. The ship sliced through the Pacific at record speed, 10 days, unchallenged, unstoppable. On July 26th, she reached Tinian Island and completed her delivery. History's deadliest weapon was now ready, and the Indianapolis, unaware of her role in shaping the atomic age, turned toward her next destination. July 30th, 1945. The sea was calm, the stars bright over the Philippine Sea. The USS Indianapolis glided through the dark, her engines humming steady, her men finally relaxed after their record-breaking run. Most of the crew slept soundly, unaware that a Japanese submarine, I-58, was tracking them through the waves. At 0014 hours, 2 flashes tore through the night. Torpedoes launched in silence, fate sealed in seconds. The first torpedo struck the starboard bow with brutal force. The explosion ripped through compartments, twisting steel like paper. Seconds later, a second torpedo slammed amidships, detonating near the No. 2 magazine, the ship's heart. A wall of flame roared upward, turning night into day. Bulkheads buckled, decks split open, and men were thrown from their bunks in chaos. In less than a minute, the once mighty cruiser was dying. Electricity failed instantly. The radio room was destroyed before a distress signal could be sent. Darkness swallowed the decks as screams echoed through smoke-filled corridors. Orders to abandon ship rang out, but confusion reigned. Some sailors scrambled for life jackets, others for ladders, while oil and fire spread across the water. 12 minutes after the first explosion, Indianapolis rolled sharply to starboard, her bow already gone. Her stern lifted briefly toward the heavens before the sea claimed her completely. Nearly 300 men went down with the ship. The rest, around 900 sailors, found themselves adrift in the oil-slicked water, clinging to debris in darkness. No one on land knew they were gone. No call for help had reached command. The ship had vanished so completely that on official logs, Indianapolis was still listed as en route. What followed would become the most horrific survival story in U.S. naval history. A nightmare born not just from war, but from the cruel indifference of the sea. When the ocean swallowed the USS Indianapolis, nearly 900 men were left adrift in the black water. There were no lifeboats, no rescue ships, not even a radio signal to mark their position. Only the burning slick of oil and the scattered wreckage bore witness to their fate. The survivors clung to debris, life vests, and each other as the ship that had once been their fortress vanished beneath the waves. For the first few hours, they still believed rescue was coming. But as the sun rose over the Philippine Sea, hope began to thin. The heat was merciless. The sea reflected sunlight like a mirror, turning every breath into fire. Lips cracked, skin blistered, and salt burned into open wounds. Thirst soon became unbearable. Some sailors tried to sip seawater. Within hours, they were delirious, their minds unraveling in agony. Hallucinations spread through the groups, visions of ships, rain, or cool streams that weren't there. One by one, men began to drift away, chasing mirages into the endless horizon. Then came the sharks. Drawn by the blood, they circled the living and the dying alike. At first, they took the wounded. Then they came in packs, striking at dawn, at dusk, at random. Sailors huddled together, kicking and shouting to keep them at bay. But the ocean seemed alive with movement beneath their feet. Each splash, each sudden scream, meant another man was gone. The horror became routine. Some men prayed, others went silent, staring into the horizon where rescue might never come. By the third day, oil coated everything: skin, clothes, even their eyes. The stench of fuel and decay filled the air. At night, the ocean grew cold, and the stars mocked them with their calm indifference. Many whispered last words to the waves. Yet, in that hellish expanse, Some refused to give in. They clung to faith, to friendship, to the faint belief that somewhere, someone would find them before the sea claimed them all. August 2nd, 1945. 5 days after the Indianapolis vanished, the survivors floated in silence. Fewer than 400 men still clung to life. The sea had taken the rest. Many could no longer move, their eyes swollen shut from salt and oil. Some drifted in circles, whispering to ghosts. Then, far above the waves, salvation appeared by chance. Lieutenant Wilbur Gwynn, piloting a PV-1 Ventura bomber, spotted a dark slick stretching for miles. At first, he thought it was an enemy submarine's trail, until he saw movement. Tiny figures waving frantically from the water. His voice cracked through the radio. "There are men down there, lots of them." Rescue orders went out immediately. PBY Catalina flying boats raced to the scene, their pilots horrified by what they saw. Some, ignoring direct orders, landed in the rough seas to pull men aboard, risking their own lives to save strangers. Lieutenant Adrian Marks and his crew dragged dozens of oil-slicked sailors onto their wings, tying them down with belts and ropes to keep them from slipping back into the water. By nightfall, destroyers arrived to complete the rescue. Of the 900 men who had gone into the sea, only 316 survived. Some wept, some simply stared at the sky, unable to believe it was over. They had endured 5 days of thirst, madness, and horror, and somehow, against every odd, they had lived. The wreck of the USS Indianapolis remained hidden for 72 years, a ghost resting 18,000 feet below the surface. When explorers finally found her in August 2017, she was remarkably intact, her guns still pointed toward the horizon, as if standing guard over her fallen crew. The sea had preserved not just steel, but a story, one of duty, courage, and the heavy cost of secrecy. Of the 1,195 men who sailed, only 316 returned home. No distress call was ever received. The Navy's own records would later reveal missed warnings, lost reports, and human errors that cost hundreds of lives. Captain Charles McVeigh, the man who commanded the Indianapolis, was court-martialed, blamed for a tragedy he could not prevent. It took over 50 years for Congress to clear his name and restore his honor. Today, the Indianapolis lies in eternal rest, a monument to sacrifice and the fragility of command in war. Her story is more than history. It's a reminder that heroism often lives not in triumph, but in perseverance against impossible odds. Life lesson. In every era, courage is not the absence of fear. It's standing firm even when no one is watching. The men of the Indianapolis faced darkness, pain, and silence, yet their endurance became their legacy. Let their story remind us to stay true, even when the world turns away. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more untold histories of courage beneath the waves.